So, by 1971, Jack had made his successful move back to DC. They were actually called DC Comics by now. And it wasn't as good a move as he was hoping it was going to be. He went there with a lot of gusto, a lot of hope, thinking that maybe this could be something better for him this time. Unfortunately, the politics of DC in that particular era, very different from Marvel, and even though DC saw money in Jack, they really saw more money in his name than anything else. When this guy put out a comic, they plastered his name on it. Kirby is here, and they were really excited that they could say that the king of comics, the king of Marvel comics at least, is now the king over here, and we've got him, yeah. But they didn't really let him do exactly what he wanted to do when he wanted to do it. And that's, for the most part, Kirby's able to, you give him something, he can do it. But Jack was hoping for a little bit more than that by now. So Jack started on the Fourth World titles. Now, the Fourth World titles include the New Gods, the most famous of them, Mr. Miracle, and the Forever People. Now, he started on a third series also, and this was kind of a pick-me-up because there was no real creative control here. There was no consistency in this particular comic. He saw that, and he wanted to work on a Superman comic, but they just weren't going to give him a Superman comic. So there was a comic called Superman's Pal, Jimmy Olsen. Now, this was the comic that Darkseid was introduced in, and several of the New Gods, the Fourth World series, actually started here, because since he was taking over this comic, his fourth comic in DC, he kind of wanted to give it a heads up, a boost, a little jump start to increase sales, so that everything that he was planning on doing was going to start right here. And that was all the motivation that it really needed. And again, you can go and you can take a look at Lewis's channel at the Geek Fortress. He did a great video on Darkseid, and he mentions more than just what I'm touching on. I don't feel the need to talk about Darkseid for the most part at all, because he pretty much covered it over there. So take a swing over. If I'm incapable of putting a link in the video itself, the link will absolutely be in the description below. So take a look. He moved on, Jack, and he was able to do a couple other series also later on. He did OMAC, and he did The Demon, and he did a few other ones that are popular amongst the DC elite. But again, the politics, just, they weren't really his forte. I don't know how else to look at it. And he's always just had those problems with editors. That's been a constant burden with Jack, to the point that anybody who was an editor, he pretty much always saw as an enemy of sorts. He didn't want to be guided. He didn't want to be led. He didn't want to be dragged along by the hand. He kind of wanted to be able to do whatever he wanted to do. And to be honest, I don't know that him doing whatever he wanted to do would have been the best for business. Let's be realistic. After he did leave both the two big companies and he went off on his own for the most part, those series didn't really do that well. So free reign for Jack might not have been the best. At the same time, he was also kind of weather beaten by that time. He was just sick of all the nonsense and the politics that he felt were, and rightfully so, were hampering and hindering the creative process that he and so many other artists, and by artists I don't just mean drawers, I also mean writers, just people who wanted to be in the comics, they simply didn't have that outlet to the fullest extent, because editors, job justification. But Jack did get to have a good time over there. He did get to create some of the most legendary characters, particularly the evil ones, but several others, characters that DC has been able to benefit from to this very day, and it's a pantheon. Anyway, by 1975, he was done. He'd had enough of that, and he decided to give Marvel another shot. Didn't last very long, but he went back. His introduction was probably the best part. Marvel had started doing the MarvelCon comic conventions. It was held in New York, and Stan Lee was there for a Fantastic Four discussion panel. And at one point he said, by the way, guys, I know you've been reading Stan's Soapbox, which was, if you're not familiar with it, it's Stan Lee's forum in the comics, that little section called Stan's Soapbox, where he would write a little article talking about this, that, and the other thing, things of the day, and things that nuanced him and whatnot, so on and so forth. Anyway, he mentioned there was going to be a big surprise at Comic-Con, and he delivered. The man delivered. So at Comic-Con, this is the 75, as he's talking about Jack returning, the King returning to Marvel, Jack actually came out. And man, I mean, that was the year I was born. So clearly I wasn't making it there. This was during the spring. I was born in the summer. So go figure, I missed this. But Jack came out and people's heads just, I could only imagine. There's no video of it that I've ever seen. I would have loved to have seen that, you know. And he got to come out. He got to have a little swagger, right? He got a little Ric Flair, woo, going on. And it was a good feeling. I know from what I've read about it, what little there is about it, that Jack felt good about it. You can tell by what you're reading that Jack enjoyed the idea that he was getting the fame, the popularity, the love, the attention that he didn't really need. He didn't necessarily want it that bad, but he wanted some kind of recognition, and he'd finally gotten it. So hoping this was going to be the norm, yeah, he came back to Marvel. But again, Stan didn't have complete control over these things, and Stan had actually left at a certain point during this time. He was gone. He had certain things going on, and just, he had different prospects in mind. So he immediately went back to work on Captain America. Why not? The storyline called Mad Bomb was the big thing that he was working on at the time. He also worked on several other projects, but he, while he was there, actually got to create several stories also. Namely, the Eternals, which, big deal, was the main rival to the New Gods. They're basically the equivalent that Stan said, you know, by all means, create, do what you want to do. And he did. He didn't get to tell all the stories that he really wanted to tell in DC. So he took the New Gods concept and brought it over here to the Eternals. And in there he had the stories that like with the Celestials, that big beast metal thing that was laying waste to everything in Guardians of the Galaxy, the first movie. And there was the head, the city, the space city, whatever, called Nowhere. That was the head that they went into, the head of a Celestial. That's Jack Kirby. And this is all part of the mythos today, right? That Jack created in the Eternals. He also wrote a rather obscure character called Moon Boy and Devil Dinosaur. Moon Boy didn't take so well. I don't know why he would. Big furry blue fur thing. I mean, we have the Beast. Isn't that enough? But he wrote on the back of the Devil Dinosaur, big red dinosaur. And it was pretty darn lovable. You couldn't not love it, you know? And it actually still exists today. They brought Devil Dinosaur back, actually for a short time in the Secret Wars storyline that went recently. That was Captain America's pet while he was off looking for his old partner Bucky in the Planet Hulk comic. But Devil Dinosaur exists to this day. Moon Girl and Devil Dinosaur. And I'm going to have a conversation about that one of these days. It's a really lovable, really enjoyable story. I love it. And I'm going to have to show you my back for a moment here. And, oh, here he is. The last character he created I'm going to talk about really briefly is The Machine Man. Not a lot of people are just like, what? Wasn't that guy in the Red Hulk story recently? Like, who is he? What is he? There's actually a brilliant story behind this. And the story is actually better than the character, unfortunately, but I had to get this because the story behind it is just, it's exquisite. And yeah, bet that's going to be a story one day. Nonetheless, without Stan actually there, it turned out to be a lot harder than he even expected it was going to be. That's Jack. So he did wind up leaving. He'd had enough. And I believe that was 1976. He was done, so he really didn't stay for very long. But he'd gotten an offer from Hanna-Barbera, and that was worth it. That was completely worth it to him. He went off, he started doing animation. He worked on several things. Turbo Teen was one of them. I watched that when I was a kid. Cool concept, I guess. Kid gets hot and all of a sudden he turns into a turbo car. And yeah, it was what it was. But he did work on a little project called Thundar the Barbarian. And if you don't know who Thundar the Barbarian is, you are expelled from the comic book university. Not really, but you'll be in a remedial class for sure. That's just, sorry, that's a given. But he worked on a lot of these projects, which were, very fun. He even got to work on the new Fantastic Four series, where he actually teamed up with Stan Lee again, briefly, right? The scripts and whatnot. So he got to do those things. If anybody remembers the brief toy line, the Centurions, that was actually his design. Maybe not completely, that's a debatable term, but he undoubtedly had some involvement in there, and that's pretty much that. He led a very full life. He lived in his house in Long Island for about 20 years or so. Guests, fans being able to come over and just sit with the king and listen to him talk and talk themselves, and Jack would listen and he would actually respond with these fans better than any Comic-Con, right? It's not just a quick autograph and you go. I actually got to sit in the home of this legend, this great, and get a sandwich by his wife Roz, right? Man. Anyway, yeah, Jack was an impressive person, a true legend, and greatly missed in the comic world. One wonders if he were given more of what he'd asked for, what, again, comic artists and writers to a degree also get as standard today. Yeah, Jack was pretty much the first person who stood up to fight for those rights, and all comics artists, for the most part, get to benefit from this to this day. He was a futurist. He could see what was eventually going to happen, and he saw a lot of really great things. Guys, I'm going to end this now. This is Professor Bill from the Comics University. Please, below, you can continue the discussion. And I need my fellow professors to help out any of the students who are asking questions. You're all inducted. And don't forget to check out the Geek Fortress, Lewis over there. Check out the Facebook page and check out the YouTube channel. Great guy. I've known this guy for a number of years now, and not just a friend but a confidant. And he's knowledgeable and a huge fan of the comics. He is a fellow professor, make no mistake about that. Go check out his Dark Side video. Stick around for a couple other videos. Just don't forget to come back to class. In the meantime, class dismissed.